6 o'clock, this is the UK Tonight. Coming up, the future of Diane Abbott dominates the day in the election campaign. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer wanted to talk about healthcare. Instead, he had to clarify reports that Ms Abbott had been barred from standing for the party, saying no such decision has been taken. The veteran MP had the Labour whip restored yesterday after she was suspended more than a year ago. Problems too for Rishi Sunak. He spent the day in the southwest pushing his plans for apprenticeships. But new polling for Sky News suggests Labour's lead is widening. Coming up, we'll get the latest live from the campaign trail as details of the first leaders' debate are revealed. Also tonight, words cannot describe the pain we feel. Those are the words of the wife of Amy Gray, the mother stabbed to death in Bournemouth on Friday. A 20-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of her murder. Plus, fresh concerns over the scheme to release prisoners early because of overcrowding. A former inmate let out under this scheme has told Sky News of chaos in jail with staff not knowing what's going on. And we're going to talk about snus, the nicotine pouches that are rife in football. Almost 1 in 5 male pro footballers use them, with most unaware of the risks. I'll be speaking to a former manager who tried to ban snus at his club. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. Well, Sir Keir Starmer had hoped to spend his day talking about Labour's plans to cut NHS waiting lists if they win the general election. Instead, he found himself under intense pressure over the position of Diane Abbott, the veteran MP suspended by the party more than a year ago. Well, Sir Keir Starmer insisted she hasn't been blocked from standing in the election. Tonight, Ms Abbott said she would not be intimidated and vowed to stay on as an MP. But Sir Keir Starmer's not the only leader feeling the strain tonight, with Rishi Sunak facing criticism from within his ranks over his decision to call this election, as polling for Sky News suggests Labour's lead has widened. Our deputy political editor Sam Coates reports.
We stand with Diane! We stand with Diane!
The country's first black MP, one of her party's longest-serving veterans. But is Diane Abbott a Labour candidate at this election? She believes the answer is no.
I was shocked to learn yesterday that I am going to be banned from running for the Labour Party.
A surprise guest at a rally with supporters in her constituency. She said she'd had no contact from the party.
It is as if you are not allowed to be a Labour MP unless you're prepared to repeat everything the leader says.
And a threat to stand as an independent in the Hackney seat she's held for nearly 40 years.
By any means possible, I will be the candidate for Hackney North and Stoke Newington.
Her leader said earlier in the day she's not been banned, or at least not yet.
That's not true. No decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott. The process that we were going through ended with the restoration of the whip the other day. So she's a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, and no decision has been taken barring her. Everybody in?
He wanted today to be about his pledge to cut NHS waiting lists, but some in his own party are aghast at the treatment of one of Labour's most famous faces. The row unlikely to dent Labour's confidence, though. The first exclusive Sky News YouGov poll of the race shows Labour is 27 points ahead of the Conservatives. Tory MPs tell me they worry that this shows that number 10 has made a miscalculation. Rishi Sunak's team called this election to start moving voters in their direction. But our poll shows that they either aren't listening or don't like what they've seen from the Tories. One minister said today they just don't think Rishi Sunak is good enough at politics. Even friendly voters can't escape noticing that gap.
What I do see in the mornings is these polls, yeah? And you're quite a way behind Labour at the moment. How much confidence do you have that those polls are a true reflection of 6 weeks' time?
The only poll that matters is the one on July 4th, when all of you get to choose our future, right? That's the one that I'm focused on. And as you can see, I hope, I am working my socks off. Oh, boom! Right, thank you very much.
Announcing today more funding for apprenticeships, but the polling has many on the right looking to the future beyond this election.
But yeah, that was a perfect splice if you're looking for a job in telecom.
Yeah. There we go. Right, there you go.
Is this man pitching to join the fight for the soul of the Tory party?
I got rid of Mrs May with the Brexit party. I stood aside for Boris to help a massive majority. What are they going to do back for me? I've done them some huge favours over the years as a party. Give me something back, we might have a conversation.
Rishi Sunak is not the only leader under pressure to move further from the centre. But with the polls against him, is he strong enough to resist that drift? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, I'm going to take you to New York next. A jury in the city are currently out deliberating in the hush-money criminal trial of Donald Trump. A unanimous verdict must be reached. It could come at any time, so we're standing by here on Sky News for that. Let's bring in our US correspondent, James Matthews, who is patiently waiting in New York for a verdict. James, what are you hearing at the moment?
Yeah, hi, Sarah-Jane. A bit of activity, actually, from inside the criminal court building. This jury was sent out at 11:28. They've been deliberating for about 3.5 hours. It would be no surprise if they had questions for the judge, questions about their deliberations and the content, the exact content of that. News from inside the building is that the jury have rung the bell, basically summoned the judge, sent a note to let him know what they're after. Now, that may be a question, that may be, and I stress it may be, a verdict. It may very well not be. It's early. It's only been 3.5 hours. It might be a surprise if they were that quick with getting to a verdict of not guilty or indeed mistrial. So we await to see exactly what they are after. We're getting a live text feed of this, Sarah-Jane, and reading this, we're awaiting the courtroom to resume operations now that the jury has rung the bell. The DA's team, the prosecuting team, has entered the courtroom, and Donald Trump has entered the courtroom too with his legal team. Team Trump are actually stationed in a nearby courtroom just down the hallway while they await a verdict. Trump has to stay in the building while the deliberations continue. Julie Rendelman is a criminal defence attorney. Julie, you've been with us over the course of this trial. It's early, isn't it? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, you know, sometimes the ringing the bell could be that someone has to go to the bathroom. I'm guessing there's a question. I get butterflies the minute I even hear a bell ringing, even though it's not my case. But again, they're all gathering. I think we'll see any moment what that note is.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a surprise if there was a question, because the judge issued his instruction this morning. That lasted an hour. They cannot take that instruction with them. It's not as if they're handed a printed form with the instructions on it. Correct.
I've seen verdicts happen very quickly. That does happen. So if it came back with a verdict, I'd be surprised, but it's not, something that's not uncommon. But I would expect some questions considering the difficulty of the charge.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Julie. Butterflies, we've all got them as we await the big verdict. And again, the text document that's coming out from the court. Jason Miller, Trump aide, and Stephen Chung, they're sitting in the back row of the court, not with the rest of Trump's team. Don Jr., Donald Trump's son, is seated in the front row along the aisle, almost directly behind his father. So that gives you a sense of the scene inside court number 1530, Sarah-Jane. Both parties, prosecution and defence, and indeed family and team supporters, clearly are gathering inside the courtroom to see exactly what the jury ringing the bell means, the significance of that. I stress, it may simply be a question. It would be no surprise at this early stage if they were just looking for pointers from the judge about their deliberations. It's a complicated case, a complicated verdict to consider. Remember, this is all about the falsification, allegedly, of the records, of business records, with a view, with an intent to commit election fraud, to pay off a porn star $130,000 so she would keep quiet in the days before the 2016 election. The prosecution, in their closing argument yesterday, said that was a plan to hoodwink the American electorate at a time when they were passing judgment on presidential candidates. And the presidential candidate who won in 2016, of course, was Donald Trump. So that's their case, that it undermined democracy effectively, that it buried bad news on Donald Trump's behalf, and that Donald Trump was the man at the heart of the conspiracy. It has been a wide-ranging case, based largely on documents, telephone communications, and so on, tied together by human first-hand testimony. That came from Michael Cohen, Trump's fixer, his enforcer, the man who turned against him. And I'm just looking at the text feed from court as I speak. Others with Trump include Boris Epshteyn, Natalie Hart, Caroline Levitt, Alina Habba, his lawyer in that civil business fraud case over the past couple of months, and Trump's friend and former witness in that civil fraud trial, Stephen Wilkoff. So there you go. Colour from inside the court. I can tell you the bell rung by the jury. The ring sounded like an old rotary telephone from the 1960s. Well, there you go. We're standing outside an old Soviet-style building, the dingy courtroom, as frequently described, freezing, in the words of Donald Trump. He's always complaining about the conditions inside court. The screen is on inside the overflow courtroom. It's the hottest ticket in town, don't forget. There is a crowd. It's packed inside the courtroom itself. The overflow is in an adjoining courtroom. Queues through the night here in Lower Manhattan with a view to getting access to what's going on. The judge has started addressing the courtroom. Good afternoon, he says. We received a note marked by the foreperson of the jury at 2:56 p.m. The foreperson of the jury will be the individual who delivers the verdict when it happens. And that foreperson is the first selected. 12 members on this jury, remember, 7 men and 5 women, 6 alternates who have been sitting in on the evidence, standing by as alternates, should they need to step in and pass judgment themselves. Here we go, but the statement signed by the foreperson requests. This looks like questions rather than verdict, I can tell you, Sarah-Jane. David Pecker testimony with regard to a phone call with Donald Trump. A David Pecker decision not to finalise something, and they're asking about testimony regarding a Trump Tower meeting. Michael Cohen's testimony regarding a Trump Tower meeting. You may remember that in the course of the prosecution case, they spoke about a meeting between David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer magazine, Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former fixer, and Donald Trump himself. At that meeting, David Pecker promised to be Donald Trump's eyes and ears, to bury negative stories about him and to promote positive stories about Donald Trump. And he planted stories about Trump's opponents at the time who were running to be Republican presidential candidates. Ted Cruz's father, you may remember that he was implicated in the assassination of JFK, no less. That's the kind of nonsense that was published in that particular media organ. And David Pecker, he was a player. You know, National Enquirer, Supermarket magazine, Donald Trump's big buddy. And he was in on a scheme, a hush money scheme, to bury bad news. Indeed, he paid $150,000 to Karen McDougal, somebody else who featured in this case, a Playboy model who claimed that she had an affair with Donald Trump. So Pecker's very much a part of the overall story. Let me head back to the text document. Trump is reading this document, this note from the jury. He puts it up in front of him, we're told. How this is going to work, Mershon will bring the jurors out. That's the judge, Juan Mershon. He'll bring the jurors out for the reading of the testimony that they want to see. The readbacks will take some time, we're told. A court reporter will do these readbacks, and the court needs to locate the exact testimony requested first. So there we are, Sarah-Jane. We do not have a verdict. We have a question from the jury, a question that, according to this, will take some time to process in terms of locating the testimony to be retrieved. Remember, there were 5 weeks of evidence, and there may be some time before we progress. Let's speak to Julie Rendelman again. Hi, Julie. What do you make of that then? It's a question quite, there's a few elements to it.
Right, which they seem to be focused on that meeting, which, you know, is something I think that the prosecution wants them to be, because I think he thinks it inures to their benefit, to the prosecution's benefit. Keep in mind, this could be one juror that wants to hear all this. Everyone goes, oh, we see this. That means everyone's on the same page. It could be one juror that says, I need to be reminded of what happened during that meeting. And so let's not read too far into this. But certainly, if we were guessing, it might be something positive for the prosecution.
And it's 3:15 now. The judge had said they were going to finish today at 4:30. This is saying this question will take some time. What do you think? Verdict today?
So if we're ending at 4:30, you have to realize both sides have to literally go through the transcript to make sure they're taking out all the objections that were sustained, so that the court reporter who's reading it back will literally only be reading those things that are admissible. They also have to go through cross-examination to cover those areas. So it's going to take time to get it together, then read it back. I think it's probably going to take beyond the 4:30 time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, Julie.
Sure.
So there you go, Sarah-Jane. That's the picture here in Lower Manhattan. A question from the jury could take some time. Doubtful, possibly, that we'll get a verdict today, but we'll see.
OK, James Matthews standing by in New York. Questions from the jury rather than a verdict. As James said, they've been out deliberating for more than 3 hours now. We'll return to New York as and when we have some more updates. Well, the junior doctors made sure that healthcare is going to be firmly on the election agenda today. They announced a 5-day strike in the lead up to polling day as part of their long-running row over pay and conditions. The Health Secretary has accused them of a highly cynical move, saying striking during this campaign proves the dispute was only ever political. Well, let's talk now to co-chair of the BMA's Junior Doctors Committee, Dr. Rob Lawrenson, who joins us on the UK Tonight. Thank you so much for your time. I wonder what your reaction was to the Health Secretary saying that this was a cynical move by junior doctors to announce strikes during this election campaign.
Good evening, Sarah, and thank you for having me on. I mean, it's just not true. We've been in disputes for over 20 months. And at the beginning of our disputes, the communications from the Department of Health and Social Care were that until we had a mandate for strike action, there was no point even talking. Now, obviously, the general election window is not 20 months long. So for her to claim that this is a purely political move is nonsense. Our message has been clear. It's been clear all along. We've suffered 26% pay erosion over the last 15 years, and we're just asking for that to be restored. And we're also happy for that not to happen all in one go. We're happy for that to take some time, and that's what we're happy to negotiate over and talk about.
Yeah, the asks from the government haven't changed. The dial hasn't moved. You know, as I said, this is a long-running dispute. You've been at loggerheads with the current government for some time now. This is the 11th round of strikes by junior doctors. But some people will say this particular round of strikes, what's the point of it? Because nothing can be done now until after the general election. It's not really putting any pressure on politicians. In fact, it's putting all the pressure on patients. So people say, why do this now? What's the point?
Well, there is a point, and actually something can be done. And I want to make this very clear. These strikes can be averted if Rishi Sunak makes a public commitment with a credible offer that gives our committee confidence that there will be a deal implemented on day one of his new government if he's able to form a new government. And so it's down to Rishi Sunak to be able to use the details through the negotiations that we've been trying to have over the last 2 years to be able to come up with that credible offer.
OK, well, look, you want a 35% pay rise, which is basically to restore the pay that was lost over the last 15 years. The Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, was asked today whether junior doctors would get that under a Labour government. And he said, We're not going to meet that because we can't afford to. What I'm absolutely willing to do is sit down and negotiate. If this isn't settled, we'll negotiate immediately if we win the next general election. I'll be focused on resolving this and making sure we don't have national strikes in the NHS under a Labour government, full stop. But he has said that a Labour government can't afford to meet your demands. And the Conservative government are saying exactly the same thing. So where does that leave you? What could Rishi Sunak say to make you call off the strikes? What's the figure that you want him to say? Because it doesn't sound like anyone's going to give you 35%.
So firstly, that's not true. That's not what Wes Streeting said. He said that he wouldn't be able to do pay restoration in one go. He said that it would be a journey, not an event.
Yeah, a negotiation, but it's not going to get to the level that you want. The Labour government won't afford it, the Conservative government can't either.
And the other part of pay restoration is you talk about 35%, and if that's going to cost a lot of money, the actual cost of pay restoration is about £1 billion. Rishi Sunak has wasted £3 billion on this dispute. There's no reason for this dispute to go on. It's affordable. And it's necessary in order to solve the retention crisis of the medical workforce in this country so that waiting lists can come down. It's clearly the right thing for anyone to do. Now, how we get to pay restoration and that journey is very much part of the negotiation and discussion. But I want to remind you and your listeners,
the current government, the representatives of the current government really 2 weeks ago.
I need to actually finish my answer because I need
to... Yeah, I know, and I need to ask you some more questions so we cover the full range of this. So you met with government representatives a couple of weeks ago. What was the outcome of that?
And when the Health Secretary 6 months ago said that she had another offer to give, she never got round to making that offer. So this government has no intention of negotiating. And I think that's that.
But this government reached a deal with consultants and put an offer to SAS doctors. This is from Victoria Atkins, the Health Secretary. She said, "I'll always deal constructively if the other side does too. Junior doctors should take note and start acting like they want a better deal for their members. I'm in politics to help patients, not trade unions." So the government is saying, look, we've reached deals with other sections of the National Health Service. Why is it that they can't strike a deal with you?
Because they're not willing to sit down at the table and actually talk through the issues. We haven't had any proper discussions for about 5 to 6 months now. And the issue that we've got is that our members, our members have been giving us very clear mandates for
Were there not talks 2 weeks ago? Have I got that wrong?
Sorry?
Were there not talks 2 weeks ago?
There have been no formal negotiations in the last few weeks, no.
So no talks whatsoever?
There are talks with the department officials and some special advisors, yes.
So that's talks, and what came of that?
Nothing. They threw their hands up and they abdicated their responsibility. And they said that there was nothing that they were able to do. And so we've had to call for strike action.
OK. Right, thank you so much for your time this evening. They're the view of junior doctors going into an 11th round of strike action during this general election campaign. Thank you so much for your time. Now, on the 12th of June, Sky News is going to be hosting an election leaders event in Grimsby, a key marginal seat in one of our target towns this election year. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Conservative leader, Rishi Sunak, have been invited to attend, and we're looking for a live audience to join us on the night. The QR code on your screen, you can scan that right now for more information. Details of how to apply will be found there as well. There's the potential opportunity to put your question to the two men who want the keys to number 10. The wife of a woman stabbed to death in Bournemouth say words cannot describe the pain her family are feeling. Amy Gray was killed on Friday night. A woman who was with her was seriously injured. Today, the club where Amy was a coach paid their own tribute, calling her a kind and devoted friend who impacted every single person at the club.
But you did get here about an hour early.
I said I'd be early.
Come on, Amy.
Yeah, I am. Let me get up. Stop. Okay, on the dot, ready for your partner to take over. Outside of the only. Okay, all the way up.
Well, let's get the latest now with Sky's Saba Chowdhury, who has been following this story for us in Bournemouth. Saba.
Good evening, SJ. Well, an inquest into the death of 34-year-old Amy Gray opened today and has now been adjourned to a later state. The coroner said that her cause of death was multiple stab wounds and that this happened at an incident here at Bournemouth Beach last Friday over the bank holiday weekend, which resulted in Amy shortly dying afterwards, and a 38-year-old woman also receiving serious injuries for which she's currently getting treatment at hospital. Now, this is clearly a difficult time for all of those involved, especially the families. Amy's wife, Sian Gray, has said the following in a statement: "Words cannot describe the pain that we feel. Amy was the most loving wife and mother." She described her as a larger-than-life character, adding, "I will miss you immensely, my love, to the moon and back, forever and always." Now, so far, police have arrested a 20-year-old man on suspicion of murder and attempted murder. This follows after a 17-year-old boy was arrested, but then subsequently released without charge. Now, in the meantime, the Devon police force here are calling on members of the public with any information or dashcam footage that could be useful for their investigation to come forward as soon as possible.
Thank you, Saba Chowdhury, with the latest there from Bournemouth. Now, fresh concerns have been raised over a scheme to release prisoners early. This is to help tackle overcrowding in UK prisons. Well, criminals who have been convicted of sexual, terrorist or serious violent offences are excluded. But victims groups fear that some people who pose a risk to the public will still get out. Sky's Molly Malone has this report.
They are the buildings surrounded by cameras, but even they can't capture the capacity crisis inside the country's prisons. We've spoken to one man who knows a bit about it. He was inside for 2.5 years, serving a sentence for GBH. Released just weeks ago, a month early, as part of the government's controversial early release scheme. But Chris, not his real name, paints a picture of chaos.
They came to my cell door. They opened the door and said to me that I'm getting released. They let me go to reception. Next thing you know, someone come down, probably about 3 hours later, and said sorry, because it's an early release, there was a mix-up with the systems.
It is a system under strain. Releases sped up in order to free up space.
Do you feel like staff there had a grip of what was going on?
No, not at all. It was all up in the air.
Some members of the public will be concerned about some people that have gone to prison for some serious crimes are being let out early. I mean, do you understand their concerns?
I understand them, but at the end of the day, everyone deserves a second chance.
But others are worried. A letter from domestic abuse charities to the Justice Secretary, and shared with Sky News, expresses serious concerns about the scheme, asking the government to exempt domestic abuse perpetrators.
We're prioritising solving a problem about prison overcrowding over the safety of victims. I have genuine fears for victims.
And recent reports by the Chief Inspector of Prisons have raised concerns too. In one case, a prisoner released early despite having a history of domestic abuse and being deemed a risk to children.
If you have an early release scheme, and the parameters are simply that if you've served fewer than 4 years, if you're not a sex offender or a terrorist offender or a life sentence prisoner, then inevitably that net is cast fairly wide, and there are some people within that net who will be designated as high risk of harm.
The government have previously said that the scheme is about protecting the public, ensuring that there's space to keep putting the most serious offenders behind bars. They've said there are strict eligibility criteria for releasing people, that the prison service retains discretion to prevent release, and that all those released will still be subject to probation supervision and stringent licence conditions. The situation in our prisons is serious. They are overcrowded and under pressure. Emergency measures to change long-term problems. But will they be enough to turn the tide? Molly Malone, Sky News.
And now, the General Secretary of the Prison Officers Association, Steve Gillen, is with me now. Steve, we cover this story a lot here on the UK Tonight. The prison system in crisis. Now, the Prison Governors Association today said that prisons will be full by July the 4th. They've given a definite date. Does that sound about right to you?
Well, that's a bit apt. That's general election day, isn't it? So no matter what happens on general election day, one party or the other are going to inherit this crisis, and they're going to have to make real decisions because we're at breaking point. Not just prisons, the whole criminal justice system.
OK. There's a big problem. Whoever's going to be in government next, that problem is still going to be there, whether it's still there for the same government or the new government inherits it. What are the solutions? This early release scheme is the one that we talk about so much. Is this part of the solution? Because there's real concerns over it.
The early release scheme isn't a solution. That's like sticking a little plaster over a gaping wound. My trade union, the PLA, have been calling for a royal commission into prisons and the whole criminal justice system since 2016. The Tories actually had it as part of the manifesto in 2019 and then dropped it because they said that they had to deal with the pandemic. But the reality is we need an adult conversation in this country. Victims of crime should always come first, second and third, quite frankly. But we can't just keep locking people up for the sake of locking people up. There's mentally ill people in our prisons. Prison officers tell me on a daily basis, we're now the forgotten service. Low paid, morale's low, prisons are full, they're suffering mental health issues themselves. And because we're out of sight, out of mind, it's not a sexy thing to talk about, but it's costing, on average, to lock an average prisoner up about £48,000 per year. You could send someone to Oxford or Cambridge for that amount. And we're just a revolving door. We're just warehousing people. And I want a proper debate in this country, not political parties, not looking at solutions, but saying who can be toughest on crime. And we've been doing that for decades. And that's why we're in the mess that we're in. Let's look at sensible solutions, because no matter who, as you've just said, Sarah, no matter who gets elected and forms a government, this crisis isn't going away. It's only going to get worse.
A grown-up conversation, sensible solutions, sounds great. But what are those sensible solutions? I mean, obviously you talk there about people ending up in prison because they have mental health issues, they commit crimes, they go into prison because there's nowhere else for them to go. Yes. We talk at length on this programme about, you know, the lack of mental health care in this country. But in terms of, you know, going to prison, people aren't just sent to prison willy-nilly. It's not, you know, an easy option for a judge, I'm sure. But what other options are there for criminals?
Well, look, this crisis hasn't just happened. It's happened over a period of time because of failed political policies. So the reality is, if you take the backlog of court cases, you can't shut 50% of magistrates' courts and expect the system to flow. So, for example, you get 16,000 remand prisoners. That's clogging up the system. So the reality is we've got to find solutions. And I agree with you. People get chance after chance before magistrates or judges will actually put someone in prison. But short-term sentences, is that the answer? Because I clearly don't think it is. What we've got to do is bring the British public along with us and actually say, let's have cohesive policies, let's have community sentencing that the general public have got confidence in. Because are we saying that in Britain that we've got a worse society than anywhere else in Europe? I don't think so. But the reality is we seem to lock up more than any other country in Europe.
Steve, do you want to see this pushed up the agenda in this general election campaign? Because I don't feel like... I mean, you know, we're not even a week in yet, but do you feel like this needs to be spoken about with the same degree of urgency that you're...
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah, because I fear all the ingredients are there for another Strange Ways. A Strange Ways, right? Now, that's not me trying to be alarmist. I'm being a realist. I've been around the criminal justice system now for 34 years, and I can't think of a worse period in our time. Overcrowding of our prisons has a knock-on effect for policing, for probation officers, for the Crown Courts, the magistrates' courts. Trials have been cancelled on a daily basis now. Magistrates don't know when to turn up, neither defence barristers or prosecution. barristers. It is chaos out there.
Well, on that stark warning, Steve, we'll leave it then, but I'm sure we will speak again on this. Steve Gillen there, POA General Secretary. Thanks for your time tonight. Thank you.
Sarah.
Still to come on the UK tonight, a mother's fight for answers. I'm going to speak to Ellen Room about why she believes accessing her son's social media could help her understand why he took his own life. That's coming. Now, the dissolution of Parliament tomorrow has added another hurdle for one mother who is desperate to know why her son took his own life. Jools Sweeney was found dead back in 2022. Police could find no reason why, and a coroner said he couldn't rule his death a suicide because there was no proof that he was in a suicidal mood. His mum believes his social media accounts could provide answers. Her petition calling for a change in the law, giving parents access to their children's accounts, has passed 100,000 signatures. However, because Parliament has been dissolved, there's no guarantees that the next government will respond to the petition. Jools' mum, Ellen Room, joins me now. But Ellen, actually, you've had an update on that. Things are much more positive in terms of whoever forms the next government.
Well, it sounds like it. So I had an email through this evening from the committee saying because we've got over 100,000 and we're actually, last time it's 123,000 I looked at it. So it will be up to the new committee that will then decide whether or not, but in the past they have tried to hear them. So I'm, fingers crossed, it should be okay.
Brilliant. A positive email coming in for you. Talk to me about Jools. He was just 14 and he had access to the social media accounts that most teenagers have, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. And he showed no signs of depression, or gave you any indication that anything was wrong?
Absolutely none. So he was almost 15 actually. But he used all the social media channels, as did all of his friends, and there was not one part of any of me that thought there was any problem. And on the night he died, I'd been speaking to him throughout the day. He was absolutely normal. He told me how he'd built a fire pit. And I remember saying, you know, don't burn yourself. But and then he said goodbye to his friend, and you can see on our camera, he says, bye, see you tomorrow. And goes in and laughs. And then I got home an hour and a half later.
You warn him of the dangers you can see, the fire pit.
I did. I said, don't burn yourself, you know, thinking, I wish he did burn himself in a way. We could have resolved that, you know. And so I never, ever expected that he would do anything. It just didn't cross my mind.
So now you're thinking of the dangers you couldn't see, and for so many parents, this is the unknown quantity in their child's life at the moment, is the social media apps.
Well, it's been proven, so the police proved he wasn't bullied. There wasn't, as far as we're aware, anybody strange in his life. So because we've ruled out everything else, the only thing I feel we haven't looked at is social media. And I didn't know until I started this that I realised that we don't have the right as parents to see our children's social media. And I had assumed that I would go, OK, well, let's look at the social media and see what there is. And we don't have that right. And that's what surprised people with this petition. People said, what do you mean you don't have the right? Surely, as a child at 14, you should have the right to be able to see it. And we don't. And I just do think, who are these social media companies protecting?
What response did you get from the social media companies to your approach?
TikTok initially said no. Without a court order, we can't go further. So I approached my MP, Alex Chalk, who's written to the Attorney-General we have to reopen his inquest, so we have to go to the High Court to get a court order to be able to then look at his social media. What a waste of money, time. You know, surely, why would that social media company not just give it back to me? They have, all of a sudden, since journalists have been involved, seem to be a bit more interested, and I do have a Zoom meeting with them at 9:30 on Friday morning. So.
And what are the questions you're going to be asking them?
Oh, I'll be direct. And this isn't just for me. You know, there's a group of parents that I'm party, an unfortunate club that nobody wants to be in. We've all lost our children. Sorry.
Hey, it's all right.
We've all lost our children, and this is about doing this for all of us. This is not just for Jools and me. It's about making a difference for everybody else. And I want answers, as they do. So I don't really care what TikTok tell me. I want answers for all of us.
And that's the thing, you want to sit in the room with these people because the society we're in at the moment, it doesn't matter what area of your life you're confronted with screens, automated messages, you know, AI. You want to sit and look someone directly in the eye and ask them those uncomfortable questions.
Oh, and I'm more than happy to do that. And I'm not holding back. And I'm not giving up on this. I will make this happen one way or another. This is going to happen, and I'm going to get that data. Because as a parent, to lose your child is horrific. And to lose your child and not have any answers, it consumes me.
It's twofold, isn't it? It's the not knowing. And, you know, my stomach flips when I think about that for you, and I'm so sorry. It's the not knowing, but it's also, as you said, there is this grassroots movement now of parents saying, no.
Yeah.
You know, we may have the, you know, new bill from government to keep our children safe online, but it is the social media companies who are being uncooperative with the people involved, the parents who are, you know, there to safeguard children, and they should be doing that as well. It's that as well. You're doing it on behalf of other parents.
Completely. And the social media side, I was almost waiting to see what this bill is and how they have to react to it. Well, why don't they start putting safety checks in right now? Why are children able to access things by saying, yes, I'm 18 or yes, I'm 16 and not having any checks? They could start that now. They could start making a difference and start protecting children's lives, because I don't want any other children, you know, to lose their lives, because it's incredibly hard. And the, you know, unfortunate thing is that there probably will be other children. And to know what those families and friends, and also my son's friends, Jools' friends, are still struggling. Through this campaign, I've had parents contact me and say, you know, so-and-so was in his class, she's still struggling. You know, this doesn't go away, and 2 years might sound like a long time, but it really isn't. I'm only, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming in to talk to us tonight. I know how important it is to you, but I am well aware of how difficult it is as well.
I'm incredibly passionate that I'm going to make this happen, and I can't thank the public enough for all of their votes.
Well, please keep going. Know that so many parents are behind you, not just those who have lost children, but those watching tonight who are concerned about their children. So thank you. Thank you for coming to talk to us, and we will talk again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen. Well, if you have been affected by anything you've heard during my discussion with Ellen Room there, you can contact the Samaritans. 116123 is their number, or you can email them, joe@samaritans.org. Still to come on the UK Tonight, we're going to be talking about snooze. You might not know what that is. I didn't know until this afternoon, but it is rife in professional football, and there's a call for it to be banned. And as Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk set a festive date for their heavyweight rematch, we'll be taking a look at Fury's chances of revenge in Riyadh. That's on the way.
Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place for news.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
I'm Helen Ann Smith. I'm Sky's Asia correspondent, and I'm based here in Beijing.
We help you understand the world with us. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Hello, welcome back to the UK Tonight. On the way, I'm going to speak to the former manager of Accrington Stanley as new research reveals the sheer number of footballers using snooze. And if you don't know what that is, stay tuned. David Fulton will be well aware of it, of course, immersed in the world of sports, so don't give it away. It's a very serious subject, and we're talking now about something else very serious, a serious fight, David. Fury Usyk, the rematch, a festive date.
Yes, they're going to do it. Yes, December the 21st, Sarah-Jane. They're going to do it all over again. Tyson Fury thought he'd won the first fight. He'd lost by split decision. Not many boxing connoisseurs thought he'd won. He nearly got stopped in the 9th round. But yeah, we're going to do it all over again in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, on December the 21st. So hopefully a little Christmas present for Tyson Fury. But you can see here he's in all kinds of trouble in the 9th. The referee kind of gave him a count, didn't actually touch down, but Usyk won it. Fury came out and said, no, I think I should have won it. He's triggered the rematch clause. December 21st is the date.
So how is Fury going to recover from that? What's going to go into it for him to win in December? Do you think he can beat Usyk second time round?
Well, he had a trilogy against Deontay Wilder, didn't they? They drew the first fight and he came back stronger, and he's got that kind of brain that kind of can work opponents out. But Usyk's a different kettle of fish. But he has huge self-belief. You've got to have that kind of self-belief to get in the ring in the first place, I would imagine. But one boxing expert does think that if he is going to win, he needs to change his team. Take a listen.
If he doesn't address it, it's going to be exactly the same thing again. He needs one chef, one main voice, one, jump. Don't ask me how high. Nobody else asks me how. Just jump. He needs one voice, the voice he respects, to get him there. If he doesn't, mark my words, it wouldn't have surprised me if the same thing happened again, number one. And number two, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't actually get in on the 21st of December.
Yeah, so he's going to have to change his team. That's Johnny Nelson. You saw what his dad was like there.
Yeah.
He can be a bit of a loose cannon, John Fury. So that's Johnny Nelson's take. So that's boxing. That's December the 21st. Coming up in the rest of the sport, we're going to be talking Europa Conference League.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
There are so few players in world football who've got a CV to compare with yours in terms of honours. But the one thing you haven't got is that silverware for your country.
Yeah.
That matters to you, doesn't it?
Of course, of course. Probably had one of the hardest moments of my career, playing in the Euros final and losing that. But I feel that the project that definitely Gareth and Steve have started here, from Russia to the Euros and then now leading into Germany, you want to be a part of it. I think the talent that we've got in depth in the squad in all areas is probably up there with one of the best teams, going to compete in the Euros. But we've got that pressure on us now. We got to a semi-final in the World Cup, we got to a Euros final. We came third in the Nations League. But I feel now we have to take that pressure on, like we do at Manchester City, like the lads do at Arsenal or Liverpool. There's pressure every time you go onto the field, and we need to enjoy that. We need to make sure that we feed off of that pressure and don't shrink, because I've seen many England teams shrink over the years when the pressure comes on them. But embrace it and have a little bit of, I said yesterday to lads, you need a little bit of arrogance when you come to places like this. You need to be a little bit arrogant on the field. Don't be cocky. Don't make sure that things are happening that shouldn't be happening. But to have the pressure that we've got on our shoulders, we should embrace it and, make sure that we live off that. I always found...
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Right, we're going to talk about snus. It's a small tobacco or nicotine patch. It's similar to a small tea bag, it's about that big, I think. Users place it in their mouths. And according to new research from Loughborough University, 1 in 5 male pro footballers are using it. The Professional Footballers Association commissioned a study which found that the majority of users didn't know of the risks posed by snus before they took up what is a highly addictive habit. Well, let's speak to John Coleman. He is the former manager of Accrington Stanley, and he actually tried to ban this at the club when he was there. He joins us now. Hello, good to see you.
Hiya. Okay.
Why is this such a big problem in football?
It is only in football, to my knowledge. I know hundreds and hundreds of people in all walks of life and industries, and I've only ever come across it in football. And yeah, football's very trend-setting, and the younger ones jump on the bandwagon, so they all cut the socks. They all want to wear white socks. They're now cutting the back of the socks to relieve the tension in the muscles. And it's just as if it's a rite of passage. You get through to the first team, you'd have to take snooze. And they're not looking at what the long-term implications could be. As you said before, I did say to ban, it's difficult. We managed to take it away from the dressing room, but they were still using it. You can't, it is argued they've got civil rights, but, if you look at how many young players are getting into it just on the back of it's a fashionable thing to do. Yeah. And they're not really thinking about what could happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, what are the effects of snus? I mean, you say they're doing it for fashion reasons, but, just reading through this report, some of the players that were interviewed for this report anonymously say they felt as if it enhanced their performance, but you saw the negative effects of it.
I don't think it enhances the performance. I mean, they might think that, but, you know, it's akin to smoking, basically. You know, it's a hit of nicotine that they're getting. And, you know, I'd like to think that, you know, smoking has become quite taboo. Even with footballers, drinking's become quite taboo, you know, which is only a good thing. You know, if you look back at the drinking culture 20, 30 years ago compared to it now, it's night and day. But it's getting replaced with other things, and unfortunately, this is one of them. And, you know, I've read a lot on it, and I've read a lot of reports about it. You know, there's a worry about increasing all types of risk of cancer, increasing diabetes risks, psychotic episodes. So there's a lot out there that if the young lads just took the time to read, I don't think they'd do it, but you just think, well, he's doing it, I'll do it.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. Former England Liverpool goalkeeper David James spoke out about this a while ago. He's been highlighting the issue, saying he used it as a player in the 90s. The big question is, how do you stop it? What kind of support do managers like you need to get it out of the game? Because like you said, it seems to be unique to football, professional football. Yeah, I mean, I welcome this study. I think the FA should get more. It's more education, really. I think that's what needs to be done. Probably the PFA need to do a course on it, really. And, you know, they come in and they advise players on various things and, you know, for the mental health as well. And I think this is one that they've got to take a grip of because it's getting out of hand. And I don't think they realise the dangers of it. Well, John, I really appreciate you coming on to highlight the dangers of it following this report. That's John Coleman there, former manager of Accrington Stanley. Thank you so much. Some breaking news to bring you before we leave you tonight. Police are asking for help to trace a father and son who are missing after going hill walking in the Scottish Highlands. This breaking news just coming into us. Tom Parry, aged 49, and his son Richie, who is 12, were due to return to their home in Cheshire on Wednesday after visiting Glen Nevis and Glencoe. Their car, we understand, was found in the Three Sisters car park in Glencoe. Now, police are urging anyone tonight who believes they may have seen or spoken to them to get in touch with them urgently. Right, that's all from the UK tonight. We will see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Dominic Waghorn is up next with The World. See you tomorrow.